Hello and welcome to Rio Calling, taking over the feed from HIV the morning after for a few days. This is Dan Hall. I'm here in Rio, reporting from AIDS 2026, the biggest HIV conference in the world. Gathered here are the greatest and the good from the global political, activist, community and medical members of those involved with HIV. Joining me is author and ACT UP activist Dan Glass. And together, we're going to get the thoughts from the convention floor on topics that are most raised by the guests of HIV the morning after. Unfortunately, our flights alone have cost us around £2,000 each to get here, and so any help with our expenses would be much appreciated. The link to our crowdfunder is in the show notes. And thanks also to BHIVA, the British HIV Association, for helping to cover our costs, and to HIV iBase for their further assistance. This episode is about inequality and intersectionality. And before meeting with Dan down in the lobby, let's hear from a couple of the podcast guests. Winnie Sseruma was raised in Uganda and diagnosed in the United States in 1988. She now works in HIV programs across 20 African countries.
Oh my God. It was about this refugee comes to the UK and brings HIV. It was mostly about bringing HIV in the country, and they should be all sent back. You know, stuff that is not very different from some of the things that are going on right now, but without HIV. But it's always like migrants this, migrants are taking over, migrants are taking our money, migrants are taking our houses. Is that familiar?
Absolutely. The wheel turns around, doesn't it?
Exactly. But that then had this intersection with HIV, which was even worse.
Louise Vallace is a yoga therapist and podcaster of Windrush Caribbean heritage. She was diagnosed in 2006.
There's not many of us. Caribbean, the shame is just too much. That's just what I think. It's just Caribbean islands are relatively small, so it's like, little villages. Everyone knows everyone, and the shame and the misogyny. Women, if you sleep about, you're loose or you're this. The stereotypical kind of images of misogyny is still there.
Links to their full episodes are in the show notes. Now then, I'm off to see my co-presenter, Dan Glass. Good morning, Dan.
Morning, Daddy boy. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Here we are at breakfast.
Yes.
The breakfasts are very good here.
It is lovely. It is really, really lovely. And I've been up early and listening to Stigma episode, which really I found really beautiful and also quite surreal. You've done an amazing job of editing it all together, all those wealth of people we spoke to, and then just hearing it all collated was nuts.
Well, I think a lot of people also appreciated your really honest opening, how you talked very honestly about your own stigma. I think it's really important on any personal journeys that we're on that we don't feel that we're ever quite at an end of the work that we're doing, because we're never completely at an end of our demons, whatever those demons are.
Vulnerability is power is one of the things I've learned, and it's important, especially now, to wear your heart on your sleeve. Who wants a person who's not going to be open, authentic, really? I think, it's about sharing our stories and sharing our struggles, and that's a real connective force.
So then today's episode is all about intersection and inequality. Why this subject? Why do you think it's important?
I am really looking forward to this episode of intersectionality and inequality. Some of the people we spoke to yesterday blew my mind with the work that they do. To give one example of why it's important, I'm thinking about Fatima from Health Justice Initiative, who was wearing a watermelon on her cap, which is the symbol of Palestine and Palestine solidarity. fund healthcare, not warfare, is a key example of intersectionality. We can't just look at healthcare or HIV in a vacuum. You know, it's all about political and economic and social priorities. Why is billions of dollars being spent on illegal genocides and not on healthcare and medication?
And also, I think when you look at things in silos, you can get away with shit more.
Exactly, Dan.
Fantastic. And I think our coach has just arrived, so should we pop off to the conference and go and speak to Dr. Tristan Barber?
Go speak to Dr. Tristan Barber. I have not had him in my life for 8 hours. Where is my Tristan? I'm going to come find you, Tristan. Oh, wow, I'm so looking forward to speaking to you about this, Dr. Tristan Barber, about inequality and intersectionality, because look at the state of the world at the moment with all the intersectional compounding crises that we're facing ecologically, socially, racially. Oh, you know, for me, HIV and AIDS has always been a portal to understand the world about power and control. Where are you at now? Being at the AIDS conference, where are you at now in terms of where we can make sense of inequality and intersectionality?
So I think we know that intersectionality and inequality drive HIV risk, they drive increased rates of HIV acquisition, and they're really key to thinking about how we continue to fight HIV globally. In the early days, of course, we saw the first AIDS cases in gay and bisexual men who have sex with men. We then started to diagnose HIV as it became known in other groups that were at higher risk of AIDS and HIV acquisition, including Black Africans, including people who inject drugs, including haemophiliacs at the time, people who received blood products that were contaminated with HIV. And we've seen the evolution of inequality to include socioeconomic inequality, to include different groups, including, of course, trans people, people who inject drugs, gay and bisexual men who have sex with men, still particularly affected by HIV and AIDS, but also migrants, people of color around the world who may be at increased risk of HIV acquisition because of inequality, that, and particularly legal inequality, that may mean they are criminalized, may mean they therefore are restricted in terms of accessing healthcare, in terms of accessing HIV prevention. And I think we see more evolving inequality now as well. Even if I look at a setting like the UK, we see variations in digital literacy, we see areas of digital poverty, we see many moves to make more services available online, to move things from hospitals into community and to move things from analog to digital, and many older people particularly may struggle with some of those changes. So we have to think about how inequality evolves and evolves in different country settings, and what the impact is of that on people's ability to be themselves, to love who they want to love, but also to access healthcare, to access HIV prevention, to access HIV treatment, and if they're living with HIV, to live a good, healthy and quality life across the entirety of their life.
My name is Andrea Carolina Reyes Rojas, and I work with IPharma Foundation and Pharmacists Without Borders Colombia.
Give us some perspective on the problems and solutions when it comes to inequalities and intersectionality.
We know what we're talking about. It is not only about then HIV, but also migration, the refugees, then armed conflict in territories, then corruption. So intersectionalities in this region are the daily life of hundreds of millions of people.
My name is Fatima Hassan. I'm from the Health Justice Initiative. I think that growing up in apartheid South Africa and as activists who basically were schooled during the anti-apartheid struggle, for us providing solidarity to communities and to activists and to healthcare workers and patients in other communities and in other countries is essential. That is why we feel angry and offended by the way in which companies like Gilead and Merck are responding to communities in Latin America, for example, excluding Brazil from key licenses. That is why we are angry about a genocide that is happening in Palestine, and the arrest and the torture and the prosecution and also the killing of healthcare workers in Gaza at this very moment. And so that complicity in terms of denying people services, in terms of taking away people's liberties and freedom is an essential part of our struggle as HIV activists.
All right, so my name is Derrick Powell, and I work with the Jamaican Network of Seropositive. And so what we do at the Jamaican Network of Seropositive is we advocate for the rights and concerns of people living with HIV. Persons normally treat persons badly because of their economic status or probably their color or background, because if you're from a low income background and you have HIV, then persons look on you like, But if you are from somebody who is top class in society, who have a business or who have some form of support system, they will look at you as a different type of person. So it all boils down to your race, your color, or your sexual orientation. So it kind of differ from the whole.
My name is Sophie. I am the CEO of a charity based in the UK called the Sophia Forum. And we advocate for the rights of women and trans women. We're a trans-inclusive organisation in HIV prevention and for women living with HIV through research, policy and advocacy.
And can you tell me, what are the problems around inequality and intersectionality when it comes to HIV?
I feel it impacts marginalised groups far greater than non-marginalised groups. And if we were to look at the systemic issues that are persistent, it's thinking about racism and how that will affect migrant people from accessing services. If we look at sexism and how that affects women engaging and accessing services, there is a failure in some areas of recognising intersectionality and how that impacts people's abilities to attend services because they're not designed for them.
My name's Simon Collins. I'm a treatment advocate with HIV iBase, which is a treatment advocacy project in London. We're in an incredibly impressive conference centre. Brazil is an upper income country, but people who are affected by HIV, people living with HIV in Brazil, don't figure on the social ladder, and so don't receive the treatments and the access treatment that they should do. So continuing to make treatments available at really high costs in Peru and in Mexico and in Argentina and in Brazil means that, in effect, people living with HIV don't get those treatments.
Okay, my name is Eliane Becks Nininahazwe, aka HIV stigma fighter. I am here at AIDS 2026. Let me tell you one thing. I've heard many times from healthcare providers in hospitals. The first time I tell the nurse, was filling the form on computer, asked me, what medication do you take? And I said, many medication I take because I have also medication for diabetic. The moment I mentioned HIV, said, you have HIV, okay. Oh, of course, you are from Africa. In Africa, everywhere is AIDS.
My name is Davide Scalenghe. I'm a media and communications expert focusing on public health. Let's take the example of somebody living with HIV, being a sex worker, but also having mental health issues. I think mental health is not talked about enough in conjunction with HIV, and it's a key topic. Think of how homosexuality is criminalized in about a third of the countries around the world. How am I, as a gay male sex worker, going to show up at a clinic in Uganda to get tested if I know that if my sexuality comes out, I'm going to get ostracized or criminalized or even imprisoned? So I think the whole idea of eliminating HIV/AIDS by 2030 rests on the fact that we must do more to work at those intersectionalities and understand that HIV is not just about getting a test and then getting a result and then getting treatment. It's also about decriminalizing homosexuality, for example, destigmatizing sex work, and so on and so forth.
Coming away from the conference floor for a moment, it's Dan Hall here again, producer and host of HIV The Morning After. Remember, you can support our costs for Rio Calling by going to the crowdfunder. The link is in the show notes. And do subscribe, rate and review these specials and the main podcast. And you can do this in your podcast app. And of course, if you like what you hear, please do tell your friends and colleagues. Now then, let's hear from a couple more of the podcast guests on today's theme, and then it's straight back to the conference floor. Reverend Jide Macaulay is a British Nigerian priest and the founder of House of Rainbow, a ministry for LGBT people of faith.
Avoid the damage that's been done by conservative religion. And unfortunately, that actually started in my own home as well, because my dad is very conservative. Even as we speak today, he does not accept, that gay people can be children of God. He actually, supported the Nigerian government in proposing a bill that became law, that can put me in jail for 14 years just for being a gay man. He missed an opportunity to address the gap in his own knowledge around human sexuality. And I wish that my dad, would be able to connect with that joy, because I was never an abomination. He called me a disgrace. He was more interested in his own reputation.
Jan, who uses a pseudonym, was diagnosed during COVID whilst living and working in Turkey.
The first positive and grateful relationship that I formed with the Turkish state was when I was on my meds on a stable course, and I could go to this beautiful state hospital, get non-judgmental care and my treatment paid for. That day I appreciated what it means to have a state, because Turkey received many Syrian refugees from the devastating Syrian civil war, and everybody I think knows someone from Syria who knows what it means not to have a state, or not to have a basic sense of hope for a predictable tomorrow.
My name is Andrea Carolina Reyes Rojas, and I was thinking when I was getting ready to do this conversation on the solutions, and honestly, I do believe that we need to build strong bonds within communities. Communities are our safe space. I'm talking not only about my family, but my friends, but my colleagues, to make stronger relationships that are based on transparency and honesty.
All right, so my name is Derrick Powell, and I work with the Jamaican network of Seropositive. All right, so the issue is, as it relates to inequality, is that we just have to accept persons for who they are, treat them with respect, no matter the background, race, color, size, shape, we just have to treat them with respect.
My name is Fatima Hassan. You don't live in isolation of other struggles, whether it's in Sudan, whether it's in Congo, whether it's in Palestine. This is an important part for us. And I think the interesting sort of aspect of all of South Africa's work on what's been happening in Palestine is that we are being punished by the Trump administration because of our very principled position around not supporting a genocide and calling it out for what it is. And so for me, that is solidarity, and there is a role for scientists, for researchers, for patient advocates and communities to play a greater role in the struggles of other people around the world. And I think right now we're also seeing that with what's happening with the Ebola outbreak in terms of stockpiles for global north countries, not providing sufficient support and technical capacity to countries in Africa that need it right now.
My name is Davide Scalenghe. I think when it comes to intersectional identities, we need to first and foremost be more specific. There is no notorious one-size-fits-all approach. So we need to speak to the individuals involved and look at that precise intersectionality. But I also have another point that I'd like to make here, and it's a fear that I have that there might not be necessarily a solution within the kind of neoliberal capitalist system in which we operate. Unfortunately, everything seems motivated by making money, producing wealth, which comes with extraction of wealth, which comes with inequality by definition. And so sometimes I'm concerned and scared that it's just too late, that we're at a stage in late stage capitalism where the thirst, the hunger for money that companies, organizations, pharmaceutical companies as well have is just way too big to put the humane in the human again.
Yeah, my name is Kene Esom. I'm a postgraduate researcher at the University of Warwick. We need to acknowledge that people are more than one identity. Even in the way we talk about global numbers today, the statistics tell us what the numbers for gay men are. It tells us the numbers for sex workers. It tells us the numbers for people who inject drugs. It tells us the numbers for transgender people. But you could be a gay man who does sex work and who injects drugs. At that intersection, what is the data telling us about your vulnerability and what your life actually looks like? You could be a woman dealing with childcare responsibilities without economic support from the state or from a significant partner. What does that mean around your access to healthcare? If you happen to be undocumented in the country where you live, how does the anxiety around navigating immigration enforcement agencies complicate access to healthcare for you? And so we should think differently about what the data means at the point of intersectionality and structurally dismantle as many of those disabling vulnerabilities that complicate our response to healthcare and HIV in particular.
My name is Sophie. I am the CEO of a charity based in the UK called the Sophia Forum. The community has to be at the centre of any research, any designing of programs, any decision make. They need to be sitting at the table. There needs to be space created. And it's not actually just about having a seat at the table. It's about others staying silent for once.
My name is Pankaj. Sethi. I am the British Association of Sexual Health and HIV's Prison Special Interest Group Chair. I think there is a narrative at the moment where we are pushing it for particular communities, but then still ignoring others. So we can't turn around and say that we are, we want to eradicate intersectionality and see everyone as the same, or that we want to completely eradicate any kind of stigma amongst any population or any community if we're going to continue to ignore them. There is a great and a huge push on Black heritage, of course, absolutely, because we see that's where there are higher numbers of cases, and new cases especially. But there are other populations as well, South Asians, the trans community, the way that that's being attacked at the minute. It's not long, and if anyone thinks that we live in a democracy, they are kidding themselves. When the world's wealth and when the world's power is controlled by 2 or 3 individuals, that is not a democracy. And what's happening to the trans community and the way that they're being treated and the way they're being excluded will happen to all of us if we don't wake up and open our eyes. And it's not going to be that long before that happens. So this is something that's really important, and it's something that if we're going to actually be activists about, this is it. Wow. This is what we need to do, because every right that we have as people that live within the LGBTQ community, as human beings, will be taken away from us so quickly and without us even realizing that it was done if we genuinely don't wake up, open our eyes and start smelling the coffee.
Oh, so good to see you, Tristan. What are your take-homes from the session?
I think the thing I'm always reminded of so fantastically at this conference is, it's so basic, but to treat people as individuals. We can talk about groups of people that are affected by stigma, but we see here so many fantastic examples of activists and advocates who tell us their own unique individual story. And that really describes to us the intersectional stigmas and inequalities that an individual has faced. So my first most important lesson is always to never assume and to treat people as individuals and to learn from the individual in front of you about how inequality and intersectionality has affected them, and take those lessons and learn from them when you're meeting other people who you might think have the same issues, but actually to explore them individually as well. There is tremendous power in coming together, in sharing these stories and strengthening each other in terms of challenging inequalities, understanding intersectionality. I think often we wonder about what the cost is of attending conferences like this. And of course, at the moment, we're all thinking very much about environmental impact of travel, international impact of coming together in this way. But the energy that's generated by people coming together as a global HIV community, I think really generates some power that helps us to address those inequalities when we go back to our home countries.
Right, Dan, so we're coming to the end of day 3, looking at inequality and intersectionality. Chatted to some great people, and we've just heard again from Dr. Tristan Barber from BHIVA.
Hi, Tristan.
But what's your takeaways from today and the conversations you've had?
You know what, Dan? It's all becoming a bit... Actually, it gives me the shivers a bit when I think about it. It's all becoming a lot more acute. We're at the end of the 3rd big day, actually the 4th day, it technically started Sunday. And the gravity of what's going on and the scale of the funding cuts, as we talked about in episode 1, is really bad.
Yeah, I'm still really not feeling the Rethink, Rebuild, Rise. Like, I think it's a great ambition, and it's a great hashtag, and it's great, but I'm not having people come up to me and say, we have this problem with intersectionality, but we've solved it, and blah, blah. People are not talking about solving problems. They're talking about, what are we going to do?
A gulf between the shiny propaganda intentions and the reality on the ground. They're like two ships in the night. And the scale, as Winnie, the UNAIDS chief, says so well, we need radical action because it's resulting in a bloodbath in so many places. And I really feel that we need to tighten and refocus our energies and audaciousness and rage. Why are there all these other political priorities, which were different from the 90s, rather than actually like supporting us to get access to healthcare? So for me, where I'm feeling now, I'm feeling a bit like focused, like really focused with a clarity, but it's also quite scary.
And it's that classic thing of HIV in itself not being a particularly interesting thing per se. It's just a virus, it's another virus, but what it does, of course, is it exposes.
It's a portal.
Yeah. It's a lens through which it exposes so much. It exposes the level to which certain types of people are held in society.
Yeah.
And that intersectionality compounds that vulnerability. And that's really what I've learned from today. And like you said, you know, the fact that we're kind of going back to the 90s, and you think, I'm getting reports from medical friends in South Africa saying, the PEPFAR funding cuts, how the first thing to go was people taking the numbers. So they don't know how the numbers are changing, really, because and the way that they can now judge it, or they're trying to, is the number of unexplained deaths of babies. And in South Africa, that is shooting up.
But let me say you this, with me saying I'm scared, it's true, but that scaredness is not going to result into fear or paralysis. We've got to alchemize that into organised action. Favourite concept that I've been thinking a lot about recently, the Buddhist philosopher Thich Nhat Hanh talks a lot about interbeing, which is all about interconnectedness, and that really, if we're looking at intersectionality and inequality, how everyone here, the 10,000 people here, as an example, all deeply interconnected, not just with our purpose, but with our physiology, right? And for anyone, the reason why I bring that up, anyone across the world, particularly I would say in the West, more privileged people who think, I'm fine, I've got my medication, surely the AIDS crisis is done. No, it's really not. if we're looking at the fact that we're all deeply interconnected in each other's humanity and well-being, like, look at the scale of thing that's going on. Really. I agree with what you say in terms of, like, it's such a insight into multiple levels of oppression and identity. For me, it's like getting your face slammed up against the window of a train, and like I was saying, there's some people going in one direction and the rest of us going on the other direction.
So Dan, that's fantastic. Thanks a lot. I'm going to disappear now and go and edit today's episode.
Thank you,
and
Dan.
You go and have a bit of a chill time.
Yeah.
And I'll see you tomorrow for what's tomorrow?
Tomorrow we are doing medical progress versus lived reality.
Fantastic.
But honestly, you get some sleep, Dan. You've been working so hard on the edit, and the people who've been interviewed in it, I've spoken to them since, they really appreciate it, and I hope all that our listeners do too. I'm sure they will.
I'm sure they will. Dan, thank you for your work.
Dan.
Will do. Many thanks for listening to Rio Calling, temporarily taking over the feed from HIV the morning after. My thanks go to co-host Dan Glass and to BHIVA's Dr. Tristan Barber. Paul Lee Nidu at Unstoppable Monsters composed the theme tune, and of course additional thanks go to BHIVA, HIV iBase and Murray Lang. Remember, challenge HIV stigma wherever you find it. This is Rio Calling, and I've been Dan Hall. See you tomorrow.